Alright YouTube, so we're back, of course, talking about some Final Fantasy VII. We're talking Ever Crisis today. So normally on this channel, we're on about an every other day upload schedule, kind of flexible, kind of depends. If there's something like, breaking information, we'll definitely talk about it, back-to-back uploads and shit. So normally we would put out a video like yesterday, Monday. But the thing is, like, kind of late Sunday night, they were putting out on Twitter that the next day, Monday, they're going to give us our first, glimpse, first look at the First Soldier story when it comes to Ever Crisis. That's kind of what we're waiting on all day yesterday. Unfortunately, they didn't drop, the first look for the First Soldier story until, late. It was, 9 o'clock my time or something like that, which is just a little too late for when we upload videos these days. I did used to upload videos kind of late back in the day, but I try to do them a little bit earlier if I can. And admittedly, what they gave us was somewhat underwhelming, and kind of something that I feel like we already sort of knew from the trailers. But first off, let's check out the tweet they dropped Sunday night that says, "Introducing Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis original story. Starting tomorrow, we'll be giving you a glimpse of FF7 Ever Crisis' new original story, Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier. Please look forward to it." So this obviously was kind of exciting, got us a little bit talking in the community, because the First Soldier stuff when it comes to Ever Crisis is the new shit. Because obviously the point of Ever Crisis, for the most part, is retelling the Final Fantasy VII compilation, which is all stuff that, if you're an FF7 fan, you probably already know, at least the majority of shit, right? So the First Soldier shit's the brand new stuff. That's the fucking young Sephiroth shit and brand new characters like Glenn, Matt, and Lucia? I'm forgetting her name, maybe. But yeah, we're getting new characters, new story there. So that's exciting. And it seemed like they're maybe going to be telling us more at some point when it comes to the First Soldier shit, because they did say starting tomorrow, right? As in, it's going to start tomorrow and maybe continue down the road. But as of right now, it's Tuesday, and we don't have any updates on when they're maybe next going to talk about it, if they even are at all. I mean, obviously they're going to talk more about First Soldier going forward, because the game's coming out September 7th in just a few weeks or whatever. So they're going to start marketing more for the game, but I just don't know if they're going to give us more on the First Soldier aspects of the story. So I dropped this tweet yesterday that says, "Introducing Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis original story. Get a sneak peek into Final Fantasy VII Ever Crisis new original story, Final Fantasy VII The First Soldier, in this synopsis." So looking at the picture itself, it says, "The hidden truth behind Soldier is revealed. A new generation is on the rise. On an isolated island far south of Midgar, the fates of 3 soldiers become intertwined with that of a renowned hero heralded as the future of Soldier." So yeah, I feel like we already kind of knew this shit from the trailers in terms of, Sephiroth having a run-in with this group of other Soldier members. At least specifically, Glenn and Sephiroth. We've seen that in, the last big trailer we got, I think, at Summer Game Fest. That Sephiroth and Glenn are going to fight, which, I'm kind of curious how it's going to go. Is that a confirmation of Glenn's death? Because, obviously, unless they make Glenn this absolute fucking badass for some reason, it's Sephiroth. If they're actually going to fight, and if they're fighting to the death, I think we know Glenn's fate at some point, right? Now, even though I initially thought that this synopsis or reveal was, kind of underwhelming, I guess we didn't have, confirmation that, Glenn and the group would know young Sephiroth, but now we do. And we actually got, a 4Gamer article, I think, Sunday as well. They had a couple images where we're seeing, Matt, Glenn, and Lucia with, young Sephiroth. But also that Summer Game Fest trailer that I just mentioned, we're seeing, adult Sephiroth with, about to fight Glenn. So we know that Glenn and the group have known Sephiroth for a lot of his life, because I believe the First Soldier shit, at least the beginning of it in Ever Crisis, it's taken place, I think, 15 years in the past, roughly. So about, 1992, if we're talking, dates and shit. So they've known Sephiroth for, more than half his life by the time that we're seeing that fight between Glenn and Sephiroth. So here's one of the images we got from the 4Gamer article, and these might have been in one of the trailers, I just don't particularly recall. It's just a picture of young Sephiroth. We see a destroyed location. I don't know if we know what this is yet. This other image is at least a little more interesting, because we're actually seeing young Sephiroth alongside Matt, Glenn, and Lucia, but also these other characters that I don't recognize the outfits, and I don't know a lot about the expanded lore when it comes to Before Crisis and Dirge of Cerberus and things like that. So I don't know if these are outfits we've seen somewhere before in the compilation, or if it's just a brand new group of people, brand new town, whatever. But it does look like young Sephiroth is kind of readying the sword to attack, so it's maybe possible that Sephiroth kills these people. This is just pure speculation here, because we did kind of briefly talk recently about whether or not, Ever Crisis is going to have young Sephiroth depicted as good or bad. Because he's technically not a bad guy, so to speak, until, the Nibelheim incident, right? Where he learns the truth of his past, he thinks he's a Cetra, he wants to kill everybody, whatever. But I'm wondering if they're not going to have him be, doing bad guy shit in the past when he's young to kind of set the groundwork that, he's always technically been bad, and it's just the Nibelheim incident is maybe just, what kind of kicked it all off to become the supervillain. But it does look like he's about to attack these people. But also, there's people that they're probably fighting, so if he kills them, it might not be he's killing innocent people or whatever the fuck. I don't know, but it looks interesting. But yeah, we have confirmation that Glenn, Matt, and Lucia have known Sephiroth for, a very long time. The synopsis also told us that it's taking place on an isolated island far south of Midgar, so they'd have to put it in, the Midil area, right? That's kind of, the only island south of, the continent that Midgar's on. We also know the Benor's in that area. I don't know if we know if we've ever known like an exact location where Benor is supposed to be at, because obviously it's destroyed by the events like, you know, FF7 or whatever. So that makes me wonder if this like isolated island where this like mission's taking place, if it's not something that's going to be like destroyed, and that's why we're not seeing it in FF7, or if it's going to be like a brand new location that they just put into the compilation, and it might be like a location that we see eventually with either Rebirth or the third game. And something else that's on topic but kind of off topic, because it's not really related to like this new stuff we're talking about from like the last day or so, but we've seen with like one of the older trailers when they were first showing off young Sephiroth how they transitioned from like young to old. We've seen like the long hair, short hair, but they've also showed the sword. The sword that he's carrying is like different when he's young versus when he's the older Sephiroth. And I'm wondering if when he's young Sephiroth that isn't a different sword, if it's like the Masamune, I think I say it, I don't fucking know, whatever. If it's the same sword and he just like made it look different as he got older, or got rid of all the charms and shit that were on it, or if he gets that sword at some point as young Sephiroth. And that's something I've always wanted, is an origin story for the sword. Because something that's always captivated me, and I've talked about this before on the channel, is like the old booklet. When you're looking through that shit, looking at like the characters, and you can like get like brief descriptions of them, they talk about how like Sephiroth is the only one that can like use the sword, like control it, use its power, whatever the description was. I haven't read it in a long time. But I've never known if that was just like magical in nature and that's why he can only use it, or if there's something like, because it's fucking ridiculously big. It's like insanely long. It'd be like impossible for the average guy to use, right? I've always just taken it as it being a magical thing, because we do see him like able to summon it, because he leaves it in President Shinra, right? And he's no longer in the Shinra building that we ever see in the original FF7, but obviously has it later. But also in like, when it comes to like Advent Children, whenever Kadaj eats the Genova cells and like becomes Sephiroth at the end of the movie, like when Sephiroth spawns in, like he has the fucking sword, like blocks Cloud's attack, right? So he like summons the sword essentially. So I've always taken it as the sword being magical in nature, but I hope we get like an origin of the sword with this young Sephiroth shit. Kind of hopping back to like what I mentioned about like Glenn's fate and potentially dying. Then again, it might explain why we don't see Glenn in like the later shit, right? Because Glenn's not in Final Fantasy VII. He's not in Advent Children. He's not in Dirge of Cerberus. These things that take place after the events of like First Soldier and shit. Maybe he just like, goes off and fucks off and disappears and like goes into the mountains and like we don't ever hear from him again or something. But I'm assuming he dies. Kind of like, it reminds me a little bit of like RDR2. Spoiler warning if you've not played that game. But once we learned that that was going to be a prequel game, and the main character you're playing as with Arthur Morgan, it's like, well, since Arthur Morgan's not in Red Dead Redemption, he's probably going to die by the end of RDR2, and of course, that's what happens. I guess it's technically possible that like Sephiroth bests him in battle outside of Fort Tamblin and just doesn't kill him, because he's not bad guy Sephiroth yet. This is still early, this is before Nibelheim incident, right? It's possible that they just fight because they're butting heads for some reason or some shit, I don't know, and like Sephiroth doesn't actually kill him in that moment. But still, like, you got to explain somehow at some point, like, why Glenn's not in the modern stuff. And maybe, if they've been big braining this shit the whole time, it's possible that maybe Glenn, Matt, and Lucia are in, like, the remake compilation, if they're still alive, like, maybe in the second and or third game. I don't know, but I'm just assuming as of right now, since we don't have them in, like, the modern stories and shit, the up-to-date stories, the, 15 years in the future, I guess, if you want to say that, that they're dead at some point. That's more or less the video, my dudes. I made it a little bit longer, did a little bit of like theorizing and discussing just because we didn't upload yesterday. I just want to talk a little bit more. And there's some stuff obviously to get from this, like synopsis and shit, but it's not like super groundbreaking information just yet. I do hope we get a little bit more, because they got to start marketing the game relatively soon, since it's going to launch on September 7th. They got to start talking about the shit. And you can market the FF7 compilation shit, obviously that's exciting, but like the Ever Crisis, like First Soldier shit, that's the new stuff. And that's what's like really exciting as a Final Fantasy VII fan. So that's like, I'm looking forward to everything about Ever Crisis, but I'm really looking forward to like diving into this First Soldier shit. That's the video, my dude. Subscribe if you guys are new, so networks in the description below. Follow me to _YT. That's it. Bye.
Used to care what people thought, but now I care more, and nobody out here's got it figured out. So therefore, I've lost all hope of a happy ending, depending on whether or not it's worth it. So insecure, no one's perfect. We spend it with no shame. We blow that like Coltrane. We in here like Location.